We are meeting in the Phillips building, in addition to virtually. Tonight we have two specific items on the agenda. I have to call the meeting to order and call John Ports.
Present.
Amy Donahue.
Here.
I'm the chair of the subcommittee and I'm here. So we're all here. Great. Let's get going. The first thing we're going to do is review the report on the results from Griffin and Berry, and I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So this afternoon, we have Lori Cable here. She's the director of the Department of Public Buildings, as well as the consultant that conducted the assessment of our HVAC systems. But before I hand it over to them, I just want to, acknowledge certainly the commitment to the town to support our heating, ventilation, air conditioning in terms of having a tremendously talented maintenance staff, as well as a dedicated HVAC technician. I've said this in many, many meetings. We're one of the probably very few districts that actually have somebody permanently employed that's only here to work on our HVAC systems for the most part. And we have great confidence, but knowing COVID-19 and know that ventilation is key in terms of helping us to be safe in our buildings. We did feel it was very appropriate to just have somebody come in, look at our systems, and make any necessary recommendations to increase the airflow wherever we could. And if there were any areas that needed remediation or improvement, to have a list of recommendations that we could go from. But again, what we're very fortunate in is having the people that can then take those recommendations and run with them and do so very well. So I'm going to hand it over to Lori Cable, who's going to walk us through basically the report. And then we have, again, Wayne Matson here, who conducted the assessment, who can answer questions or add any other information that's necessary.
Thank you. I want to piggyback on what Dee Dee had said. Is not only do we have an HVAC technician, which a lot of schools don't have, we also have a full-time preventative maintenance person to go around, do preventative maintenance, change filters. It comes up as a work order system like normal. And this is something that I really strive for when I got here. And it's something that most schools, I actually have not found a school around here that has a full-time maintenance person. So I really felt that we were a little bit ahead of the game, a little bit better than some of the other schools because we had kept up with our systems so old. Are so good, but our systems are old, and so I think it was really great that we brought in Wayne Matson from Griffin and Berry, and he's also the HVAC engineer for AI3, which is doing our project, so he was also familiar with our building. So he came in on the 26th and the 31st, and he walked around with Sean Desiree, which is our HVAC person. He walked around with Bobby Tetrout, which is our preventative maintenance person. He walked around with Ed Lewis, who's also our energy manager. So all four of them walked around all of our 6 buildings and to look at all of our systems, all of our units, all of our AC units, and all of our buildings that might have different structures in them to come up with this report. So he's come up with a 22-page report. It kind of really lies out what each school has, as well as some recommendations for each school. And I'm not going to go through each school, but I'm going to hit on some of the highlights, and then I'm going to turn it over to Wayne to see if he has anything to add, and then I think we should open it up for questions after that, and then we can get into any specifics that anybody has. So I want to hit on some of the highlights. Some of the highlights is, MERV 8 versus MERV 13. A lot of people have heard that on the news, on the radio. MERV 13 is a filter that is better than MERV 8, and you'll see in the report is some definitions on what that really means. However, if our systems are designed for MERV 8, a lot of our systems can't take MERV 18, or it will decrease the airflow because there's not enough airflow pressure to go through. So we looked at which systems, all of our systems are designed for MERV 8, but we looked at which systems can actually have MERV 13s, and some of our larger systems can. So in general, our classrooms cannot, we have to keep MERV 8 at MERV 8, but some of our large rooms, like our auditoriums, our cafeterias, our gyms, those have larger units, which means it has a larger airflow. Basically, can go through and they can do MERV 13s. So we have already ordered MERV 13s to change out these systems. There is a huge back order, as you can imagine. There's a lot of people ordering this, but they have been ordered, and as soon as they come in, we will change those out. Another thing, this the second point I wanted to bring out is we have a environmental control system. A lot of people have heard that as Johnson Control. We call it Metasys. It is basically a computer system that controls our HVAC units, how much air flows through, at what time of day we want to turn it on and off. We don't have that throughout all of our buildings, but for the units that we do have that for, it was recommended that we go full-time, 24 hours, 7 days a week occupancy. That allows air to flow all the time. So we've already changed our system so that it does that. So for all those systems, it is now in occupied mode. Great for airflow, but I do want to point out that that means our energy and our utility bills are going to go up, because that is how we save money. But we want to make sure that we're safe. So airflow right now is what is important to us. So that's what we've done. For those systems that we can't turn on and off or change the damper so there's 100% airflow through our system, what we did is we started to go through and manually change that. So in a lot of the classrooms that have manual dampers to them, we've opened up the dampers to 100% airflow. We're hopefully going to be finishing up this week, but definitely by next week to do that with all of these systems. So what that means is there's going to be 100% airflow that is going into our classrooms that we can do this for. We will do that until it gets cold outside. So by Massachusetts law, we should have heat on by October 15th. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll be cold by October 15th, but that's when we have to have our boilers ready. So once it is cold and we go to heating system, we'll go back and we'll lower those dampers to the minimum, which is about 10%. Because what we don't want the cold air going through our systems, because then it can freeze, it can cause more problems than we really want. So 100% now, and when it gets colder, we'll close them down to 10%. 10% still means that there's going to be air coming in through those vents, just not at the full capacity. We looked at all of our windows, because the best thing you can do for airflow is open your windows. So back in mid-July, we had all the custodians go around and really look at which windows were not operable. And we came up with a very, very short list. There was probably about a half dozen windows that we could not open. We have gone out and we got contractors lined up to fix those windows. We did have some windows that we can open, but won't stay open because they'll slam shut. There's ways that we can kind of figure that out in the meantime, but we've also gone out and got a contractor to work some of those issues. They're actually here today at the Lowell, because a lot of the windows at the Lowell, they open, but they don't stay open. So we're working on that also. We have some of the recommendations is if we don't have windows for airflow, or in the winter time when you can't have the window open, if there's not ventilation. I talked about those dampers that you can keep open. Well, some rooms don't have that because they're old. For example, the Phillips does not have that. They have thin tubing that doesn't work. So for any room that does not have those that airflow, we have already gone and ordered air purifiers for them. So right now, and on the last page of the report, you'll see that we have a list of where we need air purifiers. Where we consider we needed them is all the high needs classes, all classrooms or offices that didn't have windows, or any classrooms or offices that didn't have any outside airflow when it came to winter time. So that means windows didn't count. We put that all on the list and we ordered those. We've recently been looking into adding more air purifiers to the list, maybe add them in other places. We think that is good things to do, but we wanted to start out with exactly what we needed first based on this report, and then we'll go from there. This survey, and Wayne and all four of them went around, we checked all of our exhaust vents. So really an exhaust vent is, we want clean air to come in, we want dirty air to go out, so the exhaust man is taking the air out. We wanted to make sure that that was all working, that all of our systems were working, all of our fans were working on the rooftops, in our buildings, everywhere across the board. So we looked at every single one of those. And again, we found only about maybe less than a dozen that we needed to fix something about. And we've got half those fixed already, and the other, actually more than half, because I just had some closed work hours before I came here. So we will be fixing all those by the end of the week. So all of our systems, as we know, it should be good when it comes to our exhaust systems. He's got some overall recommendations in there. For example, if you have air conditioning in your room, like a lot of classrooms, especially like at the high school, have like AC units in them. So if you have an AC unit, you don't want to keep your window open. because that's going to run the system, and it's going to hurt your AC unit, and it's also going to cause some extra humidity in the rooms that we do not want. So if you can open a window, shut off your ACs. Keep that ventilation going. If you close your window, turn on those ACs. So there's a bunch of little tips in this report that he gave us. Overall, our systems were pretty well. They're old. Where we can't have ventilation, which again was not an awful lot of spots, but there are some spots, we are getting air purifiers. So that's kind of the summary of where the report kind of was. Yes, he did, and the report does go through building and kind of lump some categories in together, which we can talk about, but there was a lot of similarities. So those are the big recommendations across the board, and that's kind of where we're at with that. So before I open up to questions, I just wanted to know, Wayne, do you have anything that you would like to add to this overall summary report?
No, Lori, you summarized my 22 pages quite well, and I appreciate that, because I know it can be pretty wordy when you read this. You hit on the important parts. On the general recommendations that start on page 5, there's just some basic guidelines that everybody can follow in actually any building that exists in the town of Watertown, not just the schools. And I think you hit on everything. And like I said, I'm here for questions as you guys dig into this.
Okay, great, thank you. I will also add my thanks to Lori and her staff. I know that that the report calls out their efforts as almost heroic, and I know full well that that's actually the case. So we are very appreciative to her and her staff for helping put this all together. I will open this up first to the subcommittee members, and then we will open it up to the rest of the public if they have additional questions. So let me open it up. John or Amy, do you have anything you want to ask?
It's John. I just had one clarification, Lori. One of the early points you made was about, did you say something about kind of creating an airflow over 24 hours? Something like to that effect?
So yes, what we call it full occupancy mode. So when we have people here, we have ACs on and we have the air flowing when they're here. Usually at night we turn that down because we don't need AC at the full level that we would have when people are here. So we usually turn that down, but we're not doing that. We're pretending that our schools are going to be occupied, have people here 24/7 days a week. That keeps it at the same level and it keeps air flowing constantly.
So it's temperature, but it's also the flow of air.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Amy? Yes? No? Okay. Can I just add a follow on to that? It's a little too early for it, but at some point, will we be talking about what the projected energy costs will be in addition? I'm sure that they'll be potentially capable, right? I don't know, maybe.
If we get another round.
If there's another round of granting, right, I understand.
For example, we pretty much committed our grants, but yes.
But if there were another round.
Yes.
That would be something else that would be eligible
yes.
potentially, and so I'm just curious, do we have any sense of what the order of magnitude is at that point?
We really do not now, and I really think that we just started doing that this week, so I think we're going to probably need to wait about 2 months to go in, and then we can kind of project it for the year. Yeah. But right now, we do not.
Okay, and then a point of clarification also, you talked about October 15th having to turn on the heating systems.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that mean that we would not be able to open the windows after October 15th?
No, we can keep the windows open until it gets really too cold for us to keep the windows open, or really until we turn on the heat. October 15th means we are able to turn on the heat. Okay. So what we'll do is we have to have our boilers up and running, yep. And our boilers are set to a certain temperature. So if the certain temperature is 65, the boilers aren't going to turn on until it's 65. So in October and November, if it stays at 80 degrees, those boilers are never going to kick on. Okay. But by law, I have to have them kick on at 65 if that's the case. Now, it does mean that we have to cool off, we have to turn off some of our cooling towers, right? Because the way some of our systems work is I use some of the same pipes, so I can't have the heat on at the same time I have the cooling on. Very few places are like this, but there are some. When that's the case, that means that some of the AC might not be on, but windows can always be open.
And I know you talked about a couple of places where there are no windows at all.
Yep.
Can you kind of identify, none of those are student occupied spaces, is that right?
Most of them are office, but there are some offices that have had one-on-one student activities in those.
Okay.
If it's a decent sized building, we have said a purifier could go in there and that could be fine for that. Still means that there could be air in other ways, keep the door open, but you have an air purifier to make sure that the air has got some circulation kind of going through it, and then we're doing that. Some small, very small spaces or some that are very excluded, we have said we prefer to not use those, and that's in the report, but there's only a few of those spots. I know like the locker rooms, the middle school and the high school, the wrestling room at the high school. I think there's one room at the wall that we said just too small, that even an air purifier is not the right way. And we said that's probably not where we should have teachers and students for this pandemic.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
And Wayne, please jump in if I'm not saying things right or clearly.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
Lori, you're spot on. I think, one of the things I think it's been nice because you and I have been working pretty closely throughout this whole process. So we've been on the same page. So you're right on so far.
Thank you.
Great. I like everyone else, read newspapers and watch the news. And one of the things I heard last week was about a study coming out of Japan about airflow, that their supercomputer, which is #1 in the world, was doing a lot of modeling and trying to understand how the virus spreads when rooms are occupied and so forth. And they had concluded that just keeping a window cracked and the door open opposite was enough cross ventilation. The point, my question is about the doors. We talked about windows and having a lot of air coming in.
Yep.
So I don't really fully understand the exhausting systems and where they exist and where they don't exist, and so how they work. But then in addition to having the custodial staff opening all the windows every day, are they also opening all the doors?
They are right now not opening the exterior doors because that is safety concerns. We have safety concerns for that, but
Sorry,
I look at windows and doors almost interchangeable when it comes to this. So if your windows are open, you should have the door open. If the AC is on, you should have the doors and the windows closed. You kind of keep that. In the wintertime, when we have heat on, we can crack the windows a little bit. We just can't keep them fully open because that will ruin the system. But a little bit of airflow that kind of goes through that. When we talk about the exhaust systems, kind of a very complicated thing because sometimes exhaust systems are for multiple rooms, sometimes they're for one room. We always want balanced pressure, basically. We don't want too much air in a room. We have to have what goes in must go out, right? However, there's a few rooms that we want to make sure that the air that goes into that room goes out of that room and it goes outside and it doesn't go anywhere else. So when we talk about like our isolation rooms and our nurses' rooms, we want to make sure that there are air that goes into an isolation room. If ever anybody is to ever be sick and to be in that room, that air is not going into the classroom next to it. So that's when exhaust fans come really are very, very important, is because we need to make sure that exhaust fan is going outside and not to the room next door. We want exhaust fans everywhere, but it's extremely important in rooms where we want to make sure that the air doesn't go anywhere else.
Okay. But do they already exist in all those rooms, or are we putting additional fans in certain rooms?
We have put additional fans in some of those rooms. Some rooms we can do that fairly easy. Some rooms we can't, which means we might have to move some of the isolation rooms, but that was one of the things that we were looking at. But we did add a fan to the isolation room at the Hosmer, and we added a fan to one of the nurses' rooms in the high school. We don't know if that will be an isolation room because it's kind of small, but at least it sets as a room that we can do that for.
Potentially could be used as. Okay.
So can I just add one thing? One thing, I learned a lot about HVAC through the process of listening to the review. And I didn't even realize that, in some of the schools, the univents are both the in and the out. And one of the things that we pointed out in the discussion was we got to make sure that we don't cover our univent tops and people might not even know what the exact exhaust fan is. And some of them have like bookcases in front of them. So we have to make sure that we go through all the rooms and clear away any of the intake and outtake areas. So that was something I learned.
Yeah, and I fully understand that concept because I'm to pile things on top of flat surfaces, just like everyone else. And
Right.
so it didn't surprise me when I saw it, but I knew that that would just be an effort that we had to go through.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I learned, that just made me remember also is it's almost good that we have older systems because they're all independent, meaning the intake and the exhaust are all within the room, as opposed to 70s, 80s buildings, right, that had where they did the commingling of the air, which luckily for us we don't have that sort of a system. So that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's what we heard about.
Yes, that's correct.
I do have one very specific question about a specific room, which got called out in the report, which is the middle school locker rooms that don't have any way of having airflow. I did not know if that meant that we were not going to use those rooms at all, or if we were going to just try to, I don't have a sense of how well the airflow inside would work if you put a filter or filters inside them.
I mean, due to the large space, the lack of air, the lack of windows, the lack of anything, we recommend that we don't use that. I mean, we're not doing a lot of athletics right now, so that kind of helps with that. But the rooms that we recommend that we just don't use is our recommendation, but we certainly can talk with the staff and Dee Dee and making that. But we think those are just a few rooms that we probably shouldn't use.
And that was kind of my point, but so then the question is, how do we pivot around that?
We don't have PE.
Well, I don't know that I want to say that out
No.
loud.
We have the guidelines from the state have indicated that we should not be having any indoor PE. So I'm serious.
Yeah,
The solution is that because of the state guidelines, any PE that we would have would be outdoors, and we would just not have kids change if we end up in a hybrid where they were in PE. But even in the hybrid that we've developed, the PE is online, it's virtual. So okay. I'm not actually concerned because I don't think we're going to be accessing the locker rooms.
I just want people to hear that.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
So thank you for that.
Yes.
Let me just, I think there was one other question I had. So can we talk a little bit more about the the 8 versus the 13?
Yeah.
I really think that people may not fully understand what the 13 represents and what the 8 represents, and is it okay for 8? Is it not okay for 8? Is it 13 like the only gold standard that we have to achieve? That's
so how I explain this in very simple terms is think of a colander, right? So you have a spaghetti colander, and they're different size holes, and a MERV 8 has medium-sized holes, and a MERV 13 has really, really tiny holes. So less things can get through on the little tiny holes. That's what makes MERV 13 a little bit better than MERV 8 is it can only, it's going to capture more particles than a MERV 8. MERV 8 is still acceptable. It does a lot of things. It lists kind of some of the things that it does, but it's not as good as a MERV 13. However, if you put a colander and you put a lot of water in the little tiny holes, it's not going to go through as fast, and the water comes up in a colander, right? That's exactly what will happen if you put a MERV 13 in a system that can't take a MERV 13. And what it will do is it will back up, and it will cause more problems, and it will cause less air to flow through than what a MERV 8 normally could do. So MERV 8 is still good. It's what our systems are designed for. If we can do a MERV 13, we can, but we don't want to put a MERV 13 just because it's a 13, because it could hinder the airflow if we put it in the wrong systems.
Okay, and this is maybe not a question specifically for you because I understand that concept, but thank you for the explanation. What I really wanted to, the corollary to that, right, is, or the follow-on is, and what does the science say about MERV 8 versus MERV? Is it safe enough for our students and our staff to move to hybrid at some point, or is it that we need to do additional work? And you may not be able to answer that. I'm not looking for you to be the public health expert here. And so Dee Dee stepped out of the room. It's all right.
But I think that what we are trying to really do, and Wayne, I'm gonna have you step in and help me out in a minute. But really what we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize the airflow. So whatever that takes, we want to do that. So MERV 18, or I wish it was MERV 18, right? That's the next one. MERV 8 is going to do that. Opening the windows is going to do that. And by allowing that to happen, we are going to put as much airflow in the buildings as we possibly can. So I don't think it really boils down to, is it safe with the MERV 8 and the MERV 13? I think you have to look at the whole picture and figure out what actually is airflow. And we certainly don't want to stop airflow. So putting the MERV 13 can stop airflow in a system that has MERV 8. We don't want to do that. We want to maximize airflow. So Wade, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Lori. So essentially, if you look at the Harvard study and some of the other studies that have been done recently by like environmental health and engineering, as well as Harvard, as well as ASHRAE. So everything we do is based on ASHRAE recommendations, and ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Engineers, and they are kind of like it's a group that dedicates their lives to making recommendations on airflow, on heat loads and cooling calculations, and everything that's associated with HVAC. These people look at. So in this case here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to balance airflow with filtration, okay? So in most of your schools, your classrooms have classroom unit ventilators, which is the device and the definitions in the report, so I won't go into a lot of details, but it's a device that brings in outside air, heats that air, and distributes that to the space. So these units in these schools were designed over varying generations of 30s, 40s, 60s, and 1990s. They were never designed to have a filter that has a pressure drop like a MERV 13. So although everybody jumps immediately to the MERV 13 filter recommendation, you got to look at it holistically and how it works with your equipment. So what we do is that we balance the MERV 13 versus airflow. Well, if the MERV 13 is going to impede airflow, we would go to the MERV 8. And if you look at the Harvard study, they automatically go originally to improving airflow and improving outdoor air ventilation. Well, MERV 8 gives that benefit, whereas MERV 13 would start to impede that performance. So that's why we go to the MERV 8. Now, MERV 8 is a very good filter, and MERV 8, and the report kind of touches on it, will trap mold spores, pollen, dust mite, and dander. So if any of those particles have the virus on them, that's going to get trapped in the filter. What MERV 13 does, it takes it one step further. It traps the propellant nuclei, the sneezes. So that's why they've automatically gone to that. But in our case, to do MERV 8 in unit ventilators in classrooms and some of the smaller fan coils, I think is going to hurt, not help.
Okay, no, perfect. I think that's a great explanation, and I'll end my questioning there. I see that we already have some people who have raised their hands, so I just want to kind of lay the ground rules before we open it up to the public. So if you have a question you'd like to ask verbally, please raise your hand. And then in addition, the superintendent is monitoring the chat, so if you have something that you want to post there instead, we will try to get to it. I will say that all of this subcommittee, I forgot to say this at the beginning of the meeting, it is being recorded and will be available after the fact, posted on the WCA TV website. So, and in addition, that also allows us to capture whatever's in the chat that we didn't get to, and we can potentially answer those questions at that after the fact. So,
and if I could also add,
yes.
I posted the reports on the website.
Okay.
In the subcommittee, school committee top tab, subcommittee side tab, and I also put it into the chat. So anybody who's in the Zoom meeting can just pull it from the chat, but anybody who's watching it WCA TV wise, they can pull it off the website.
Okay, perfect, perfect, great. So Sean Morris is the first person with his
Yes.
hand raised.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, thank you all so much, first of all, for your hard work. I really, really appreciate what you're doing for our schools. I have two really quick questions. I promise not to take up too much time. My first question is, I'm a little unclear about the plan for the winter. you said that we were going to be given air purifiers. Am I under the impression that there will still be airflow through the buildings that will pass through these MERV filters in the winter?
Yes, so, what we talked about is, we're bringing in 100% air outside the unit vents right now. We will bring that down to minimum, but there was still, our minimum is 10%. So you're still gonna have airflow going outside. It's just the air purifiers will help. The air purifiers originally are gonna be in those rooms that don't have that. And there are a few rooms that don't have that fresh air coming in. And that's where we 100% need air purifiers. But there, in most of the rooms, there is still outside air coming in.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. My last question, I think you might have just answered that, but what are the exact criteria for the rooms that will be eligible for air purifiers?
So our criteria of what we have ordered air purifiers to date is high needs. Any classroom or office that had a high needs student in it. Any classroom or office that did not have a window, or any office or classroom that did not have that outside air that could come in at least that 10%. Those are the rooms that we said we 100% need air purifiers in there. We are looking to add to that list, maybe put air purifiers everywhere, but that is something that we're looking at, and our priority right now is to get them where we absolutely need it, and those are the 3 criteria that we said we absolutely need air purifiers in.
All right, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
And I could add just also at the end of the report, there's the list that we've identified. So if people are curious, they can look at the last page of the report to see the rooms that have been identified, but we are augmenting that additionally as well.
Okay, the next person up, Brian Donato.
Thank you very much. My name is Brendan Donato. I'm a teacher at the middle school. My wife teaches at the Hosmer, and my oldest son goes to the Hosmer. My question is for Mr. Mattson. Thank you for the thorough report. I only quickly read through the middle school, but I do see the recommendation to operate the systems 24/7. Can you talk, one, how important is it that it runs 24/7? And 2, if we don't run it 24/7, how safe will the air quality be for the teachers and students and staff? Thank you, Mr. Mattson.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so the reason we like to run it 24/7 is that once you establish air circulation and students come into the school, students and teachers, after the end of the school day, they take a certain period of time to kind of flush out the building. So, in our professional opinion, and ASHRAE and Harvard looks at this, kind of feels the same way, is once they leave the building, if you keep the systems running, you continue to flush out any contaminants that happen to be in the building during the course of what would normally be the unoccupied mode. So middle school, students probably leave 2:30, 3 o'clock, teachers probably end up leaving around 4. This is just an example. So you have from 4 until 6 o'clock the next morning to have continued air circulation, which will flush out that building in preparation for the next day. That is not to say that if the system was put back into a traditional occupied, unoccupied mode, where students and teachers would be vacating the school by 4 o'clock and the building would go into an unoccupied mode. It's not to say the building is going to become inherently dangerous. It's just that it's outside of the recommendations of ASHRAE and the Harvard study.
I'd like to also add to that too, is we often have, in the past, we've had a lot of staff turn off these ventilators even during the day and shut down the dampers. And we want to make sure that even in the winter, we want that 10% to be coming through. That 10% is outside air. That still is a little bit chilly. We're going to keep the room, overall the room at the right temperature, the temperatures that we need to heat our classrooms in. But if you're right by that ventilator and it's pushing out that air right there, it's going to be a little bit chilly, but we want that air to go. So we want to make sure that we keep all these ventilators on.
Just to follow up, Mr. Mattson, if we don't run it 24/7, the quality of the air will not be as good for the staff and the students if we don't run it 24/7 as if we do run it 24/7. Would you agree?
Yeah, so basically, the answer to that question, I mean, there's a little bit of a hypothetical nature to that question, but it's always going to be better if the system is running 24/7 to continuously ventilate the building, even if nobody's there. And that's current thinking and the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mattson.
Kind of just,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much. And then Laura, you said that we've already switched it to the 24/7 in all the buildings.
We have switched it, what we can with our system, that has already been done, and we're manually doing it when, to 100% still, manually for those systems that we couldn't do online.
We're still working on that,
Yes,
but it will be done before the start of school.
yes.
Okay, great. Barbara Berry?
Hi, thank you very much. And I want to thank the school committee and the superintendent for allowing Mr. Mattson to come in, because I know colleagues in other towns and they are saying that their school committee is not doing a thorough evaluation like this. So we appreciate it. I'm a teacher at the Cunniff School, Cunniff West now. I have two questions. How often should the air filters be changed? I haven't had a chance to look at your report yet.
So
Air filters really depend on the system, and we go by manufacturer, but the manufacturer is saying that the filter needs to be changed. A lot of times that is anywhere between 6 months to 1 year. We have a preventative maintenance program that automatically kicks out when we have filters that need to be changed, and that is one of the things that our preventative maintenance tech does. But what we've done is, under the recommendation of Mr. Madison, we've upped that. So right now, if a recommendation by their manufacturer is change your filters twice a year, we have added that one more time. So we're now going to be changing them 3 more years. If the recommendation was to change it 4 times a year, every quarter, then we are going to update it 1 more time. So we're going to be changing these filters a little bit more than what the recommendation is, but it really is what the system does. So anytime you get a filter, and even with the air purifiers that are coming in, the air purifiers have filters that need to be changed. So we read what the manufacturer says, we throw that into the work order system, and then we're going to up it. We're going to up it a little bit during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other follow-up. Well, this isn't really a follow-up, but I've learned that windows are critically important. So we have a lot of, I know that we went around and kind of identified inoperable windows and windows who need screens and whatever. At Cunniff West, we have no screens on the windows, and we realized that it's going to be hard to get screens for those windows. So we were told we're going to get one screen per classroom. So that might mean that a lot of places can only open one window at a time. So is that enough to help the airflow?
So what we had said is 1 screen per office right now, so that we can get at least 1 screen throughout the district, because most schools do not have screens. So we wanted to make sure there was at least 1 screen in every room. So that is our goal right now, and that's what we're working on. We're having a very, very hard time finding screens that match up with these old windows and the size. They just don't make these over-the-shelf things. You have to get them custom made. So we're working on that. We have ordered at least 1 screen right now for the Cunniff, so that is on order. I want you to be aware that you don't need screens to open the windows. I know that there's some times where, you know, in certain areas there might be certain bugs, there might be certain things, so that's not the best thing. But you don't need a screen in order to open the window. Once we have, especially if you open just a little bit. Once we get windows, at least 1 screen in every one, I think we need to relook at, do we need screens somewhere else? But our priority was at least to get 1 in each room for now.
I think that the thing, just so you know, that teachers are concerned about is those teachers of younger children at the Phillips and the Cunniff West are a little bit, tiny bit nervous about opening windows without screens. They think it's a safety hazard. Just
Right.
Yeah.
You just have to, I mean, definitely we'll have to even mark or measure, you know, the safe, just like in a home, like, you know, what's the safe amount so that kids can't get through them. I mean, the other thing at Cunniff West is that, you know, just because, I mean, that's been, we are ordering air purifiers for the rooms in Cunniff West too. So if a teacher's not feeling comfortable about having their windows open, they can shut the windows and turn on the air purifier. So
Thank you.
That was another step at the kind of west.
Yeah, and we are looking at, is there some makeshift that we can kind of put in, just set in the window for now. There's some screens that kind of like open up wide, you kind of put that. But we're also finding that the windows in these buildings don't match up with what we're finding too. So we're kind of keeping an open mind and trying to think outside the box when it comes with this. But that is on our radar to increase as we go.
Okay, great, thank you. Deb King.
Hi all. Thank you for this. Thank you for the assessment of the HVAC system for the schools. I have a few questions. Barbara's already asked a couple of them, but I do have a follow-up on at least one of them. So first off, what type of filters have been ordered? What are the filters? I'm not filters, air purifiers.
We've got 2 air purifiers, and we're trying to keep to only do 2 in order to be able to buy filters, because we're going to be buying a lot of filters now. So we got Honeywell. I know we have Honeywell is one brand, and I don't know the exact make of that, and I can get that to you. And Austin is the other brand. But Deb, when this meeting is done, I can send you over the specs, because I have that in the email. I just don't remember off the top of my head. I can send that right at the end of this meeting.
That's great. Now, do you know, Lori, offhand, if these filters that you've ordered, how often they rotate the air? Like, I know that a minimum of 5 times per hour or something. I have to go back to the documents to look at it. Do you know how often that the airflow changed?
Yeah, I think the Honeywell was a little less. I think that was just over 3 times an hour, and I think the other ones were 4 times an hour. But that's in the specs, and I'll make sure that I send that to you also.
Okay, so I guess I'd question why we didn't look at something that changes the airflow at least the minimum of 5 times per hour.
I don't know where the minimum of 5. I mean, I think that you can.
It came from a Harvard study.
I said 4.
I think that
I think that's 4.
I thought it was 4 also, so that I'll look back into that.
Okay.
Another thing that we wanted to do is there's a lot of different air purifiers out there that do a lot of different things, and we wanted to make sure that our air purifiers did everything. So for example, we did find one that had a higher exchange rate, but it wasn't a HEPA filter. And so we wanted to make sure we had HEPA filters in there. So really playing the shell game and marrying it up was a little bit harder than what you think. And we think, and then we've got some records that show that these are some of the top air purifiers when it comes to all the rankings, and I can send it over to you too. And I apologize for not knowing this at the top of my head. But there's a lot of pieces, and we wanted to make sure that if we're putting air purifiers in the room, it's going to be a good air purifier for everything, not just for this pandemic. We want it to be good for this pandemic, but for everything else that we might encounter in these older buildings.
Okay, and you're correct. It should be they should be HEPA air purifiers. So the other thing I just wanted to follow up on was the recommendations, the manufacturer's recommendations for the change of the filters. Those recommendations are under normal circumstances. This pandemic is anything but normal. And I appreciate that you're willing to change them a little more than recommended, but I think we need to do a lot better than that. And maybe if it's not changing them, and I don't have the answer for this, is there a way to disinfect them? And I'm thinking nightly. Is there a way to disinfect the air filters for the HVAC systems and for the air purifiers? I don't know if that's possible. Is there a disinfectant spray that can be sprayed on them? Something that can be done on a daily basis, because we are about as far away as we could be from these recommendations that were made for normal circumstances. And we're talking.
I think I'll tackle the first part, and then Wayne, I'm going to have you tackle the second part. But I think you're right. I think we are going to increase the air filters, and this isn't normal time. And usually when we increase these, we can kind of see. When you change your air purifier at home, if you're too late or too early in changing your air purifiers. So we're going to be really taking a look at doing this. Right now, we don't have a lot of people in our room. So right now, I think adding one right now, at least until we get to the hybrid level, is a good start. But if we start getting the hybrid and we start seeing that there's a lot more, then I think that increasing it a couple more times might make sense to do that. And I think that's something that we'll continuously be evaluating. When it comes to disinfecting, I don't know that. Wayne, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. This question is being asked today because I just sat in on a seminar about filter change intervals and virus, how they live on filters, and a couple of items. So one thing I want to start with is, believe it or not, the dirtier a filter gets, actually the better it works. Which it's very counterintuitive. Not that we recommend you leave dirty filters in equipment. That's not what I mean. But right now, there haven't been a lot of studies done on how long will a virus live on a filter. Is a virus on a dust particle, a piece of dander, a piece of hair, a carpet fiber that's stuck to the filter? How long will that survive on that filter? There's been some speculation that it's going to live just as long in the filter as it would on a desktop or a chair or a carpet. So there is a lot of conversations ongoing right now. So far, the manufacturers have not recommended additional filter changes based on COVID-19. They're recommending additional filter changes based on runtime of equipment. So again, it's a little different, but that's one of the reasons why Lori's recommending the increased filter change intervals, because the run times are longer. So I look at these items daily. I participate in a lot of seminars. I'm a member of ASHRAE, so we look at this very closely. So right now, as far as how you can disinfect a filter, we haven't really seen any definitive recommendations on that yet.
Okay, so I mean, it's something that could be considered for Watertown. It makes me very uncomfortable. Obviously we're not talking about the common cold or even the flu. We're talking about a virus that is deadly. So would you recommend against disinfection, or should we be proactive and disinfect, spray down the filters every night?
It's kind of interesting. I don't think it could hurt. We'd have to figure out what's the correct way of doing that without damaging filters or equipment.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'd appreciate it if that could be looked into. And I think just a question for you, Lori, around the screens is, do you have an estimate for when the additional screens will be installed beyond the one per classroom or one per window?
I really don't, and I don't have them for every room right now. I know that we have one for every room in the Cunniff West, and I know that there's a couple at the Lowell that's been requested, and then I think a couple at the Phillips. And at the middle school. The middle school requested a few more. The middle school ones, we haven't been able to find them yet.
Is there anything we can do, even some makeshift or something we can do? Because I'm going to tell you, I've taught in the system long enough that I remember having windows with no screens. That was the standard. And we would open windows, and I'm going to tell you, whether it's elementary through to the high school, my bet is the second a fly flies in or a bee flies in, kids will be screaming, masks will be coming off, kids will be jumping up and running around. It's inevitable. We just didn't even open windows when there were no screens. So it was such a great treat to finally get screens about, 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, that I don't think it is an option to open windows without a screen. And since airflow seems to be the most important thing that we can do besides wearing masks, I think it feels to me like it's critical that we look at getting screens in more than one window.
And I pledge to you, Deb, that we'll look at out of the box ways of trying to do this. It is hard, but we are still looking at it. I mean, Dee Dee threw a couple of ideas towards me this morning too. So we'll keep on this, and we will try to figure out something.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks, Lori. Thanks everyone for your time.
I might have shared the teacher hacks for how to put a screen on a window, but that's right.
Okay,
So there are many.
That's right. We're very creative teachers. That's what we're known for. So
great. We only have a couple more people or 3 more people in the line.
we have some.
And we have some
chat.
in the chat. So is there something you want to share from the chat quickly before I?
Seems like a lot of questions are on the screens, but there is one from Ian from the high school. At the high school, do the thermostats, I assume near the door, do anything? And does it make a difference if they are adjusted?
So I can answer that, Lori.
But go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, so the thermostats, leaving the doors and windows open, having the thermostat near the door does not impact ventilation nor vice versa. That thermostat just measuring the temperature of the air in that location, the control of the heat at the unit vent or fan coil or air handling unit, whatever the case may be. So that's a standard location. Thermostat should always be away from windows where there's drafts or solar on it. So that's just
Oh,
the standard
sorry, I was just wondering if they actually adjusted airflow or anything, so we should worry about not changing them. Sorry to clarify.
Oh, no, thank you, Ian. I'm glad you did. No, the airflow is maintained by the unit, and that's at a constant volume. That thermostat will just open a control valve to add hot water to a coil or reduce hot water through a coil to control the heat. That's all.
Thank you. That answers my question.
There's something else that we need to
I think, there's a question about when was the last time the filters were changed at the Cunniff West?
At the Cunniff West, we might have done that last week. So we are actually finishing off doing Cunniff West preventative maintenance now. So recently. Prior to that, I don't know, but it has happened in the last week or so.
And then will the system be run over weekends, holidays, and vacations?
Right now, we are running 24/7. Yes.
Okay, so let's jump back to the raised hands and see if we can kind of nip this in the bud. Marguerite Peterson.
Oh, don't forget Amy.
Oh,
It's okay. You can go right ahead. I was offline. I had bad connection when it was my turn way in the beginning, so I'm happy to wait.
Oh, you, okay. So
Read if you don't mind.
Okay, hi, I'm Marguerite. I'm an ESL teacher at the Hosmer. And I've been reading the report, so I apologize if my questions are answered and I didn't see them. This is kind of a 2-part question. So I see in the summary that classrooms, the media center, gym, and the main office guidance and nurses suite were studied, but a lot, or at least a couple of spaces where high needs students will be are spaces that aren't considered classrooms normally and don't have a unit ventilator. For example, the classroom that my team will be using does not have a unit ventilator. And so I'm wondering if those spaces were considered, and then also what the recommendation would be for a space like that. Our space is about 14 by 30 and it has windows and the door opens to the entryway of the school. And so I'm wondering if it's a good idea to keep that door open or if we should be keeping it closed because there's so much traffic in that area that there could potentially be like a lot more contaminated air in that space.
Wayne, I'll have you answer that.
Yeah, so we did go through a lot of the spaces, including smaller spaces, and the smaller spaces that don't have a unit ventilator, which would be occupied by a student and teachers, they will get a air purifier. The space that has windows and a door that leads to the building exterior, we would not recommend that being open primarily for obviously for a security reason. But having the windows open will give you good gains in ventilation.
So what about the door that leads to like the front entryway of the school where everyone comes in and out? So even when I was like briefly there today, there was a lot of traffic in that area. Should that door be open or closed?
I would think that basically the security concern and the distraction concern would outweigh the door being open for improved ventilation, in my opinion.
That might be.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Amy.
Oh, okay. Thank you, everyone. Lori, Wayne, Dr. Galston, thank you for this report. I haven't dug through it completely, but I did touch upon their recommendations. So this might have been answered in the beginning when I was kind of in and out offline. But the testing that was recommended for the ventilation performance, and I understand that obviously the accurate reading wouldn't be until the students are back occupying the classroom. When that happens, how often would you say that testing would be done?
The CO2.
And then what, and I'll follow up with, and then what does the testing, how is that done?
So yeah, I'll jump in here. So the Harvard study has, they don't define a period of testing. They say regular testing. And generally, I mean, I think that from a common sense standpoint, I would say probably seasonally.
Okay.
Would be my recommendation on that. And basically they're using CO2 as kind of like as a proxy, like it says in the report. So basically just kind of, it's kind of an indicator of performance, but it's not the end all be all.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. And then kind of touching back upon the running of the equipment, and I think one thing that we need to be careful of, Deb, I think you have a great point of, disinfecting the filters. I know we have them in the restaurant and we have to change them very frequently. But I think we also at the same time have to be very careful of what we decide to disinfect our materials with. One, for the purpose of keeping them running properly. And two, we want to make sure that we're not spraying things on our filters that then could be not healthy for breathing in our classroom. So I do think we need to probably research that more carefully. And then one other thought I had on screens, just because, and I can't offer the assistance to make them because I didn't do it, but they do sell large rolls of screen at Home Depot for a very cheap price. And they're very easily just can put across a window, either with my favorite, duct tape, or you can put them in with a metal thing, and I'm sure I'm saying this all wrong, but you can kind of put them into a little groove and they fit in, and that's a really cheap way to put a screen onto a window. So just a thought.
Yeah, Amy, that.
I'm not handy, but I did have someone do it to my own front porch here.
Not all of our windows are like that, and in order to do that, you wouldn't be able to open the window or close the window. You got to keep it up. So, and we are looking into that. That was one of Dee Dee's hacks, but it's not going to work on all of our windows and still have our windows operational and still have it not blow off if there's a little bit of wind. So we're looking at all those pieces right now. But yes, we're considering that.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, thank you, everybody.
Okay, Carol Blackwood.
Yep.
Last hand.
Hi, thank you. Just a quick question. In the winter, usually I've been at the HOSMA, so I can only speak to the HOSMA for the past 20 years. And each year, usually when it's super cold, the systems break down or certain rooms will completely not be running and working. Is there a backup plan for when that happens? Because it's so cold out, the windows probably can't be open that much. Is it safe to be in there? And Mr. Mattson, what do you recommend as a backup plan? Does it make sense just any room with students and staff have air filters? Would that cover us to keep us safe in there if that should happen?
So one thing about HOSMER is the HOSMER benefits from having all the classrooms have classroom unit ventilators and a functioning general exhaust system. So in the winter time, having operable windows although it would be a benefit, it's not the most necessary thing to have. I do know that now having an HVAC technician and a preventive maintenance program in place at Watertown should minimize equipment breakdowns. And I think just probably having a few standby or air purifiers that can be delivered at a moment's notice would also be a big help.
Thank you.
Saran has her hand up.
Yep.
Saran.
Saran Tamakian.
I saw a few people had the same question in the chat, but the bathroom, the staff bathroom that we use on our floor is about 3 by 3 feet, and there's no window. And I mean, I know I've heard that when you flush, the particles go in the air. I'm just wondering what kind of ventilation takes care of that. Like, how safe are we to use the bathroom right after somebody walked out?
Excuse
I think those are two different questions, but Wayne, why don't you answer the ventilation question is a little bit different than some of the other questions, but you can answer the.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there is a toilet exhaust system in that school, and that does run continuously. So I would just say if it was a multi-person toilet room, what we do here in our office here, our office has 19 people. It's one at a time, where the person who leaves are responsible for cleaning up after themselves after they leave the place as clean and sanitized as possible for the next person. I do know in a school setting that may not always be the most practical thing to do when you have limited time between classes and you have students and you're sharing a lot of spaces. But basically, going back to the Harvard study again, and I don't mean to keep referring to that, but it's a very detailed, thorough study, is that sanitation and personal sanitation and personal hygiene is paramount to helping avoid the spread of COVID-19. But there is a toilet exhaust system that runs continuously, always drawing air, generally from a corridor or adjacent space through the toilet room and exits the building without crossing any of the spaces.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm starting to be conscious of time. We do have a second item on the agenda that we have to get to before we close. I see that there's one hand, so Deb will be the last person who can raise their hand that I will call on, okay? And then we will try to potentially answer one or two more questions out of the chat quickly before we move to the next item. So Deb.
Oh,
you're muted.
We do it every day.
Oh, sorry, I should know this by now. I've done this so many times. So thank you. I appreciate it. But this one isn't really a question, but for any community members or any public that is listening to this and wondering, where is this money coming from? There is the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and certainly Dee Dee is a better person to speak to this if necessary. I know that we've had some money already allocated. We also have, there's an additional $3,169,982 that can be distributed to Watertown. So just so the public knows, I think we should be in pretty good shape. And of course, that money is specific to things that are specific to COVID, but that would include additional staff. It would include, the screens we're talking about, the filters, anything that's, we're doing because of COVID, the PPE and all of that should be covered by this money. So I just want people that may not be aware of that to be aware that there is money there to cover what we're asking for. And thanks again for the second opportunity.
What was that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and if you, I could just clarify, we've had 2 rounds of grant funding specifically for schools. One was approximately $380,000, which we had to share with private schools as well. And then there was an additional $605,000 that was CARES Act 3. The town did get the $3 million, that's a town allocation for CARES Act, and yes, schools are part of that larger umbrella. And we're hoping for the additional stimulus package, which is obviously right now in Congress. And that should also provide some more relief to schools and communities, so municipalities.
So stay tuned.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, anything last in the chat that we want to address quickly?
The UV light we looked into, but I think we determined that the units that we had with the HEPA filters would be sufficient, and but certainly something that is growing again as something that might potentially be beneficial, but we're very confident about the air purifiers that we bought and went with ones that didn't have the UV light. It just didn't seem at this point necessary.
Right, and especially for the smaller units that we're getting for the rooms. And Wayne, you can jump in on this, but I've seen a lot of the UV lights are for larger units, but not necessarily for the small room air purifiers that we're getting. It just doesn't seem to make that much of a difference, and we wanted the HEPA more than anything else.
Yeah, you're right, Lori. There's a lot of information out there about UV lights and equipment that, where you could retrofit large area handler units. But in the classrooms with the unit ventilators, and they can't be retrofit UV lights, and the purifiers you bought, we felt that they were perfectly suited for their application.
And then that question about the air purifiers being ready for the high need students, I think that
we are very hopeful. There are actually a bunch of them coming in right now. As you can imagine, a lot of them are in back order. We've got a bunch of them in, and we're gonna make sure that we get them to the high needs first. So they're supposed to be in before then.
And we're phasing in our high need students. So
yes,
we should have enough for sure for the first, the substantially separate program. And then, as the weeks progress, we should be getting more in.
Yeah, and we're gonna make sure that we're very strategic in where we put these to make sure that we get them to the right spots first and then filter in the rest.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Okay, so the second item, we need to kind of close off this discussion around this report, and now we need to shift a little bit. We have to review some procedures for the LEED certification for the elementary school projects. And again, I'll pass the baton to Dr. Galdston, who will then properly pass it to Lori.
And I will do that. We're just very excited about the LEED certification for our elementary school projects, and then eventually, high school as well. I think we're very proud to state that we're the first net zero, schools in the Commonwealth. And so this is just part of that process to get to for LEED, and Lori has done a great job putting together the documents that we're going to have to submit.
So basically there's a lot of different parts when it comes to LEED, and it's all based on a point system. And a lot of these point systems are done based on our architects, how we were building our building and what we're putting into our building. But we also have to prove to LEED that we are going to maintain this building and it's going to meet their standards. So there's 4 plans that we had to put together to show this is our plan and this is how we're going to continue LEED in the future. All 4 of these plans we do now. So these are not new plans for us. What we had to do is we had to really change their look so that they were in a LEED format. And so I'm going to go through these just really, really quick. I'm not going to go into much detail. I can ask questions. But we had to put them in the format, and because it's considered a plan and it's for LEED, I just kind of wanted to bring it up to everybody. So the first plan is facility maintenance and renovations. So basically what this plan is it's saying when we're going to renovate a building, when we're going to paint, when we're going to add carpet, when we're going to add anything that has to do with renovation, we need to make sure, there's a bunch of different criteria, but in general, we need to make sure that 80% or more of our purchases meet sustainability criteria. So we can't just go buy whatever we want. We're going to be looking at the labels and we're making sure. So this plan says that. And it kind of breaks it a little bit more in detail, but in general, 80% of what we change out of our buildings is going to do that. That's exactly what AI3 is doing to put in. So we don't want to make sure that we take anything out and put anything else in. Hopefully we won't be doing any renovation to these new buildings for a very long time. Right. Excuse me. And then I got it right here. And then the people that are in charge, responsible for this plan are both listed as my department, myself, and then Heidi Perkins as the finance director, because it's not only building stuff, but because there's some financial stuff that she needs to know too. So that's that plan. Then there's the waste policy, and we can go back and answer questions. I just want to go through these quick. Then there's the waste policy plan. So what this really means is there's a lot of a lot of durable items and waste items that we do. This can be paper, this can be pens, anything that we need to buy that we're going to be throwing out. What is our plan for that? So this plan says that we have to, thank you. Our percentage has to be over 75% of these products will meet sustainability criteria, and that we will make sure 50% is diverted from landfill. So that's a lot of the recycle, reuse kind of things that we need to have. So we need to make sure that everything we buy falls into that category. Also is what we're throwing away. So what we're throwing in our dumpsters and what we're throwing in our recycling bins. So we have a piece as Department of Public Buildings, since we oversee that for the schools. DPW has a piece too, because they're the ones that are actually dumping it. And then of course, everybody really has a piece of this. So everyone is responsible for this plan, because there's so many people that are buying paper and pens across the board. So we want to make sure that everyone knows that. So with this also comes an educational piece that we'll be doing when we do these new buildings. The third plan is our pest management plan. Our pest management plan is pretty robust because it's a state requirement plan and it's on the state website, and you'll see that we put that right at the beginning of the plan where you can go to that. So we basically just took that plan down and threw it into this lead format. But it basically says that we're going 100% alternative pest management needs. We're not using chemicals, and if we do have to use chemicals, we go as 100% or the least non-least toxic method is what they say. So we just kind of work our way down there. So we're trying to not use chemicals at all, only in the worst case scenario. And that plan also falls under the responsibility of Department of Public Buildings, because we run that pest management program. Then the last plan we have is our green cleaning plan. We have been using green cleaning products prior to me getting here. That was something that my predecessors started a couple of years ago, and we just added to that. We make sure that all of our products are clean. Joe Sexton is our supervisor custodian. He's 100% on board with this. He's trying to get rid of all aerosol cans. He's going green 100%. So this falls exactly in line with us, and it basically says that we are going to have 85% of our products need to meet sustainability criteria, and I'm letting you know that 85 is a low number, because we're really up in the 90s and the 100% for a lot of our cleaning products. And again, that falls under my department, the Department of Public Buildings, for this plan. So that's just kind of a brief overview of these plans. Like I said, these are kind of already plans that we have established. They're just now in a different format, but I'll answer any questions that anybody has on these plans.
Okay. John or Amy, do you have any questions?
I don't really have any questions. Just want to thank Lori and her department for working on this, because it's, from the building committee, and Lori knows this, we put a lot of work into trying to make sure that the two buildings are really state of the art, if you will, in terms of sustainability and energy efficiency. And it's important, the LEED program really requires not that you just do it when you build it, but when you maintain that as the building ages, and in terms of proper maintenance, et cetera. And Lori's outlined that. So just, thank you to all of her work on this.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think it is helpful to have documentation of existing procedures that we are already following to show how far ahead we already were, and just that now that it's documented and we can show it to the lead committee, and we've already been doing this, we already know how to do this, this is how we're going to continue.
Yeah, I am in everything that we're doing right now, we're trying to get into good processes and plans now, so that when we move into the new buildings, we've got everything under, that we're exactly where we need to be. And we're really good right now. There's just, we can always improve, so we're making sure that we're tip-top, so when those buildings come, they're going to be tip-top for a very long time.
Are there more of these to come? Just curiosity, more than...
I don't think so. I think these are the major plans. There's a few other pieces, but it's not necessarily plans. But if there is, I will let you know. But I don't know of any right now.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments from the committee, I think we are ready to adjourn. Any new business I should ask, I suppose, before we adjourn? Any members?
No.
Being none, okay. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Great, and seconded, and so all in favor, John
Aye.
Forts,
Aye.
Aye.
David Stokes. We're adjourned. Thank you very, very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, Wade.
Yes, thank you, Wayne, if you're, I don't think he's still.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.